Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to this edition of the Presence Posse Presents. Today, our topic is presence and healthy relationships. And I have Dr. Fred Blum and Danielle McMahon with me. I'm Miriam Siegel. So, do you want to dive right into the topic, or would you like to say something about yourself? Okay, I saw you nod, Fred.
Dive.
Presence and healthy relationships. Where to start? Okay, do any of us purport to have healthy relationships? I guess that's one way to start. Actually, you know what? Why don't we actually dive into what do we mean by healthy relationships?
That's what I was going to say too.
Yeah. So since you were going to say that, why don't you give us your 2 cents on it, Fred?
Sure. Well, I think actually it's a really important question because otherwise we just talk about it, or other people can talk about it without really knowing whether they have one or not. And I don't think that I would say there's like a thing called a healthy relationship. Like I can say, here it is, you either have this or you don't. It's going to be whatever that means to you. Like there are people right now that have relationships that they may consider very healthy that any one of us or anyone watching this may not consider healthy. So, who gets to decide? But so to me, I would have to suggest that a healthy relationship was based in communication, mutual respect. To me, also, I think it's it's a relationship based less and less, maybe progressively over time, in ego versus a deeper understanding of who we see in the other. So off the top of my head.
Okay, now that I've heard that, I'm thinking it's going to be a really interesting conversation. Danielle, what about you? What's a healthy relationship?
There's a level of honesty in a healthy relationship that comes from being honest with yourself. And I think that's the sort of upper limit for that. If you're not honest with yourself, you can't be honest with another, and you're going to have some layer of deception or distortion or something in between the communication that Fred referred to as being necessary. And also, I think that people tend to, and I think you've addressed this before, Miriam, just assume what other people's intention is. And so the way that you hear something is not necessarily the way that they intended it. So the ability to reflect to them so that you're not making that judgment without information, and the ability to stay present. When I saw the topic, I'm like, oh, look, presence, that's where healthy relationships live, right? You're not dredging up the old things. You're not projecting where we're going with this before we've gotten there, and you're staying present with it.
Cool. Well, for me, also healthy relationships have an element of trust. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people misunderstand what I mean by trust. I mean trust themselves, not the other person. Or there's a way of trusting another person, and that would be to trust the other person to be who that person is, not who I wish they were, not who I assume they are, but who they are. And then the trust is on me to, I trust myself. So I trust myself to be able to handle whatever comes my way in the relationship, any challenges, or I trust myself to be open to my partner and maybe be able to deal with any kind of feelings of shame or fear or whatever in the relationship. That's what I mean by trust. It doesn't mean I trust you to do what I want you to do, or to behave the way I want you to behave so that I feel safe. Feeling safe is my responsibility. And then, as you say, presence. The relationship happens now, in now. That also means, or can mean, that something from the past can come up and become present in a moment. Like my partner may do something that reminds me of something that happened to me a while ago. And then I bring that up, knowing that this is happening. I'm feeling it now, but it doesn't happen now. And being able to communicate about that. Like, I feel vulnerable right now because something happened to me before and I'm feeling it in this moment. So I take responsibility for that and don't put that on the other person, assuming that I feel this way because you did something. Does that make sense?
Of course. Yeah,
Ooh.
the word that comes to my mind is responsibility. Not like responsibility as a burden, like I'm responsible for everything, but more like responsibility as in I have the power to respond in any number of ways to you and your situation and what you're experiencing in this moment. And the only way I should add that we really create the power to respond differently, other than automatically, is, as has been pointed out now, presence. Right. The more we're living in the present, we can notice our own responses, and so we don't just randomly throw out whatever shows up in our head. We slow down enough to maybe get in that gap between stimulus and response, and then allow ourselves to operate in a relationship in a way that actually creates greater connection, intimacy, trust, all these things that we're talking about.
That's also an interesting point. I like how you mentioned the gap between stimulus and response. And if anybody's out there struggling with any form of impulse control, you might not notice that there actually is a gap.
Exactly.
It might be stimulus, boom, and you're off the handle, whatever. And it's the other person. It's like, you did this, and then you're in the full-blown argument. Finding the gap, feeling the gap, being able to take advantage of the gap, that's training. I mean, some people are quite natural at it. They've done it for a long time. And some people have previous experience where they don't notice the gap. Perhaps they've been terrorized. Perhaps something really painful has happened. And they go from stimulus to response. They're in their feelings before they even notice. And then they
in their
can't
lower
stop
brain,
it. Yeah.
right? In their, amygdala hijack and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, or what some people call the reptile.
Reptile brain.
Yeah.
And presence lives in the gap. I mean, I guess presence could really be all of it, couldn't it? Like you could even watch yourself sometimes react to something and still have some degree of awareness of it, but maybe not enough. Like, what's the word? Like enough. It's not willpower, but something that allows you to not react.
Presence.
I would just say connection. Right?
Because sometimes we you find yourself, like, someone says something and you find yourself reacting and you're arguing and you're, and it becomes that thing. And then some part of you is going, this is just a bad idea, and yet you're still doing it. So there is presence, and yet not enough to change, to pivot in that moment.
You brought up connection, Danielle, and actually I think that's an interesting topic as well, connected to this healthy relationships and presence, because connection is a kind of presence, yeah?
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking. Like, you can have presence in the observer role and still not be connected to what's
right.
action that you're taking, right? So in that moment, you don't have enough connection to your presence to stop the behavior or the words or the whatever it is that's you're in your head going, like, why am I doing this? Is this even necessary? It's probably not necessary. But also, when you were talking earlier about impulse control, there's also the opposite reaction of just completely shutting down. right? And if you've been traumatized, that's often the reaction that you would choose. Rather than escalate it, you'll just like not be involved at all. So then you're disconnected entirely from the present situation, where you just don't have the presence of safety to respond at all. So I think both of those things are things that I've experienced, right? Like I can go one way, or I can just like, yep, fine, whatever you say.
Yeah, and I mean, most of us have wiring, and you can get into, there's all kinds of like personality models, like the DISC or the Enneagram or whatever, that sort of describe this, like whether your default is to be passive or to be aggressive, to attack, to defend, whatever it may be. And so, it's like personalities don't do very well in relationships. You know what I mean? Like if it's just my personality and your personality, then that's a reaction waiting to happen, basically. So
And I think it's useful to know those personalities, so you
I
realize
agree.
why everybody doesn't react the same way you do. I mean,
Exactly. And even to know why you react the way you do, because
right.
yeah, I completely agree. So, I mean, look, this is why relationships are hard, right? Because, I mean, it takes work to move, to clear out enough of our own garbage that I can even, like have some hope of actually being present with you. And then hopefully someone else is doing some similar degree of work to be present with me. And now we have something. Now there's a possibility of real connection, like Danielle speaks about. And I wanted to add one more thing, one more word that I haven't heard yet, which is sensitivity. And what I mean by that here is, I'll give you an example. So I was at a movie with a friend of mine yesterday, and she is very sensitive, like around issues with food, and she has to eat at the right time and all this kind of stuff and the right kind of food. And about, I don't know, maybe 2/3 into the movie, she starts saying, I'm really hungry. I need to do something. I need to get some food. And it became like this escalating issue. And I'm not criticizing her at all. This was like her reality in the moment. But by sensitivity, it's like there was a part of me, quite frankly, that was getting pretty annoyed with it. Like, why the hell didn't you just bring a friggin', energy bar or something? But I also realized that in that moment, there was no chance that annoyance was going to do anything except escalate it. So I remained relatively quiet. I was listened, I was understanding, but I tried not to do any, like get any of my stuff on her in that moment, because, whereas in another conversation, what I mean by sensitivity was in another conversation where she or somebody is more resourceful, you can maybe be a little more blunt, a little more direct. But if I'm just like, look, this is me, I'm a direct person, I say what's on my mind. Well, okay, good luck with that. Sometimes you're going to make a huge mess being that person.
So it's kind of like tuning into the other person, or
Yeah.
being sensitive what's going on, and kind of like connection, another aspect of connection that Danielle was talking about.
Yeah.
And I'm noticing that there are many things coming up, but I'll just put it down to two specific things. There's what my responsibility is, and then there's the other person's responsibility in connection with me. So if I, for example, say, or fly off the handle suddenly, I'm not present to what's going on, I've lost impulse control and I'm just upset, then the other person also has an option. Hopefully won't just automatically be triggered and go straight to the response as well, right? And not notice the gap between the stimulus and response, but understand that there's something going on with me. I'm not able to be present in that moment, or at least completely present. It still means the other person, the receiver, still has a choice to make space for whatever's going on and allow it and be present to it and sensitive to it, as you described, or to react.
Right.
So there's the difference between reflection and reaction, right? Whether I'm able to be present and reflect on something, like you were saying, what's your best option when this person is getting herself wound up, or just fly off the handle, because for example, neither of us have any impulse control, for example. And that can happen. I mean, no matter how long we practice presence, we're still human.
Right.
So that kind of thing can happen at any time. And a part of I see you smiling, Danielle. Then part of the practice becomes, how quickly can I find my way back? How quickly can I come back to myself, come back to presence, and be present for myself and the other person, and meet the other person in a way that's, conducive to good communication, calm, peace, love, joy, and all those things that come with presence.
And then we get to ask ourselves, a kind of hard question. And you can ask this question in life at any time. I'm just reading Angela's comment, and we can't behave as this what we will do to fix the other person's struggle. That's where I guess, Let's circle back to that in a second. So the challenging question that is not always an easy one is, what am I committed to in this moment? Because committed to is reflected in action, in behavior. It's not like what I say I'm committed to. Like if I say, I'm committed to open and honest, loving communication, and you're just wrong right now. There's a little bit of a disconnect there. So what I'm committed to is like what I'm actually living in this moment. And of course, and that's not a judgment. It's just to see, what am I really committed to? Am I committed to moving beyond my insecurity, my triggers, my whatever, to create this idea of a loving, open relationship? Or am I committed to whatever trigger has, pulled me down the rabbit hole?
I'm committed to being right.
Yeah, exactly. That's a big thing.
That's total self-destruction when it comes to healthy relationships. I'm right. Danielle, do you want to say anything about commitment?
Well, I'm going to say, for what you just said, would you rather be right or would you rather be happy? And I've said that to my children, and my son said to me one day, I want to be both. Well, yeah.
You will not be forced into a dichotomy. God, I like him already.
Yeah. The other thing that came up as you were talking about responsibility a few times here in this conversation is, and I can't remember who said it, it may be Joe Vitale, but said that there's not a 50-50 responsibility in relationships, right? There's 100% and 100%. Right. So in a relationship, there's 200% total responsibility, and we each have to take total responsibility within the relationship. And that was almost a paradigm shift for me, right? Like I knew that I had to take 100% responsibility, but somehow I thought maybe that meant the other person didn't have to take any.
100-0, right?
Right? Like, why is it like that? No, that's good. I'm glad they get to take responsibility for themselves, and it relieves me of the responsibility for them. Right.
And
so as a female, maybe in particular, as somebody in the helping profession in general, we tend to take responsibility for things that are not ours. And Angela mentioned that, right? Like, here, I gave you the information, you're fixed, right?
Right.
But it's their choice whether to use that information and whether they want to be fixed or not, or whether they view themselves as needing fixed. That was sort of the paradigm shift, I guess, of codependence for me, was when people don't take the wisdom that I offer them, right? They might not take it because they didn't think they needed wisdom then. Like, I'm telling you, you're not capable of taking care of yourself. You need to take my advice to do it.
Mm-hmm. So, it's almost demeaning, isn't it?
Almost a what?
It's in a way, it's kind of demeaning. It's
right.
like, Yeah, it's like, I know better than you. I know what you need. Do what I say. I don't have all the facts, by the way, but I'm going to assume that I do. And then I'm going to tell you how you can fix your problem,
Well,
even though
it's
you didn't
arrogant.
ask me. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it lessens the other person. It's like, okay, you obviously can't handle this, so
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you what to do, even though you didn't ask. And you may actually need something completely different, just like my compassion. You need to be heard, seen, loved, whatever, but not commanded or controlled or whatever to make me feel good. Because it's often about that. If I'm trying to fix somebody else, I want to feel good about myself. Right?
Yeah.
Well,
It's
yeah.
just
Often
and
about that.
in
Mhm.
codependence, it is that if I take care of you, you'll take care of me, right? Like if I take responsibility for you, then I expect you to figure out how to take care of me without me having to tell you or ask you or
The
Which sounds like a
telepathic.
race. Sounds like a race to the bottom.
yeah, but it's very common.
It
Yeah.
is. Yeah. And
I
I'm
actually,
sure we've
sorry,
all
go
been
ahead.
there. I'm just gonna say I'm sure we all have been there, some version of that. Well, except
Not
for
me.
me.
No, except for me.
Sorry,
No, no,
sorry.
no.
You broke up there. Did you say something? Like,
What I actually find interesting, this is, and we're getting to that also, I've heard, the sort of idea of healthy relationships being at some level telepathic. Like, I shouldn't have to tell you what I need or want. You should just know. And if you really loved me, you would know it and you would do it. Like there's some sort of condition on the relationship and some telepathic thing. And I've spoken to many people who don't want to say what they need or what they want, how they feel, because it takes the romance away from the relationship. Yeah. Go for it, Fred.
no, I don't know if I have anything brilliant to add, but that's funny because I'm like, that's an interesting definition. Well, I'm not a big, I think this idea, this concept of romance, I think is overrated. You
You
know,
think?
it's what's that?
You think
You
so?
think? Well, I do. Uh, that that maybe relationships aren't like the movies. Maybe we don't see each other across a crowded room, and it's like just that's. um,
And live
maybe,
happily ever after.
maybe relationships take work, um, and I had a conversation. It was very interesting one time with someone about arranged marriage, which is like the opposite of romance, you know? And yet I think it's very interesting because these people aren't pretending that there has to be some spark, which is really what the relationship is all about, some intangible spark. They know that they're going to have to work at this, that they're going to have, I'm talking about not some kind of like weird forced servitude thing, which I know that happens too. I'm
Mhm.
talking about two people coming together for whatever kind of reason, because of families or whatever. And they know we're going to now make a life together. We're going to create a life together. And I think there's something to be said for that because really, after how long do you want to keep relying on that spark or do you want to keep finding it in the other person?
And arranged marriages can certainly have sparks.
They can, but you have to
Just,
find them.
yes. Yes. I mean, if you're very fortunate, then an arranged marriage can be people, love at first sight or whatever, and it works out really well. But I agree with you in my experience. I was actually, I grew up in a culture and a family where the marriages were arranged and my parents chose who they wanted me to marry. And so I moved to a different country. But I mean, it wasn't, fortunately from a family where it wasn't, the intention was to find someone who would create a good life for me.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
they're not, deliberately out to find some jerk, to use a word. It was someone who they thought would treat me well and also be able to provide for me and that kind of thing. And so the potential, of course, was there for us to, if I had gone that route, to build on that. You know,
And of
yeah.
course, keeping in mind that, marriage at one point was for survival, or at least, we come together because we need to team up in order to, make it in the world. That may not always be the case now. So we don't have to, partner that way. We come together because we choose to come together.
Mhm.
Um,
And there are many kinds of partnerships, many kinds of relationships that, I mean, when I was a kid, we were brought up to believe that this plus this is a good relationship. And now it's like, well, pretty much anything goes as long as it works.
right. And that goes back to, what does that mean? Works.
Yeah. It works if you work it. Isn't that well the expression goes?
That's the anonymous thing, right?
Well, there is some wisdom in that, of course.
Of course.
I mean, some relationships have sort of a magic that is there and may always be there, and the rest of it is work.
And I'm interested. The magic part is very interesting to me, because what is that? Is that something that just is like blessed on us? Or is it something that we actively create?
Mm-hmm. You know what? That's kind of a cool question, because I've just recently had an amazing experience. If you don't mind me sharing.
That's why we're here.
Not with, oh, thank you. Not with I've been with my significant other for 30 years. We're going to be celebrating 30 years this fall. But this person I actually met about 14, 15 years ago, didn't see for a long time, and then ran into again a little while ago, and have been spending time with. And he's a fantastic human being. And there was something the whole time, even from when I met him before and didn't see him for like 14 years, there was something about him that my system just reacted to. He was just very important, and I didn't understand why. And I don't always have to understand. It just is. That's sort of the beauty of presence as well. I don't have to start trying to figure it out. I'm just with the experience. So as I'm being with this person and being with this person over time, I'm just noticing, feeling really, really open. Really, everything is easy. Even when we don't agree, it's just really easy. I say what I think, he says what he thinks, I explain my point of view, he explains his. I mean, nothing is a problem ever. And that actually bothered me a bit. It's like, what is going on with this? And it's like something good would happen to this person, I would be overjoyed, like so happy on his behalf for him, and just felt incredible. It sounds like it's not like that anymore, but it still is. I'm just talking about what happened in the past. Like just an incredible love for this person. It just made no sense. And then it did. Something just happened. Something just opened up in because I kept trying to sort of figure it out, and that was limiting it. It was making all the experience just less. And then all of a sudden I just stopped doing that and became completely present to the experience of the experience. And everything suddenly made sense. Everything was just so obvious. And I just understood, kind of like that sperm with that egg creates that particular child. And it couldn't have been a different sperm, a different egg, because then it would have been something else. With this person and me, this happens. And it's effortless. And there's tons of love, and it just moves and flows and is so open, and it's not hard. Just the communication is there. We're both committed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I mean, sometimes is now my experience. It actually has been several times, but in this particular case, it was enormous. Sometimes it's just that person in that situation with that person, and it just is magic.
Yeah, I could absolutely, and we call it chemistry or whatever we call it.
Yeah, I don't know what to call it. All I know is just having been with this person and having had that experience of not trying to figure it out, and not, being kind of like, I don't know why I'm feeling this way, and it's too easy. Is this even possible? And then all the things when I don't understand what's going on. And the minute I just let go of all of that and just allowed it to happen, it was just like, okay, I have no fear, I have no guilt, I have no grief, I have no self-judgment. Everything just disappeared. It was really weird. I was this huge void just because of being present with this other person and allowing whatever was to unfold and is unfolding. And I guess, presence is a big part of it, because I was trying not to, and then the minute I got present, it was like really present, boom. And that's, I guess, it's a magic moment, and one of those magic moments in life, which, yes, can happen. But my point is also that it's not romantic. It's not, it doesn't mean we do not have to work at communication, because we do. It doesn't mean we have to don't have to work on our friendship and and we don't always disagree, or we always agree, or whatever. If we do. But there's that underlying, we're here, we're committed. And when we are, as we are, it just flows and works. It's like the work it drives itself. So yeah, I have now very deep experience with that kind of relationship. And I also have the experience of being with my significant other for 30 years and working like a maniac so that relationship, and knowing that we're both committed to, no matter how bad it gets, we're going to sit down and we're going to figure this out and find back to ourselves. And we've been doing that for 30 years, and it is amazing, but it's not easy always.
Well, there's that word commitment again, right?
Yeah. I'm just going to have a quick look at the comments. Oh, thank you very much. Rosalie says that's beautiful. I'm going to bring up a comment from Rosalie here. This has been my problem. Intuition doesn't always work both ways, so learning to ask for what I want. Yeah. It's, what's beautiful, one of the things, there's so many, but one of the things that's beautiful about healthy relationships is they afford me an opportunity to find out what I want. They afford me an opportunity to be with myself, bring myself fully and wholly, as much as I can anyway, to the relationship. And to be able to do that, I need to know who I am, what I want.
Yeah. It really is. There are things about being in relationship with another human being, if you're going to do it consciously, if you're going to do it in presence, that will force us to let go of old habits, old personality, or ego elements, because they just don't work anymore. So when you bring the commitment like you're describing, it's just you have to learn to, I don't want to say have to, but it just seems like what works best is to keep moving more and more away from those old patterns.
Would you say that trust is involved in moving away from old patterns?
Yeah, sure. Trust in yourself, trust in the other person that they're going to catch you if you fall. Yeah, I think so. What about you?
I actually had another, like a thought that it has something to do with that, and it just went right out of my head. And it's, one of those thoughts where you go, oh, that was really good. I really want to say that. And then it just, so I just have to trust that it'll come back.
Or not.
Or not.
Yeah.
What else I was thinking, if you don't mind, Danielle, you actually have a relationship with animals who do not speak words out loud for the rest of us to hear.
And interestingly enough, my mom asked me when I was probably like 4th grade what I wanted to be. And I said I wanted to be a veterinarian or a pediatrician. So I am not a doctor, but she took that to some friend of hers and said, these don't seem to be related. And that person said, they both take nonverbal skill. Right? So you have to be able to read the child. You have to be able to read the animal. You have to be able to intuit. a certain amount of that. So go figured, I married a man who very much thinks that if he has to tell me what he wants, that takes away from the romance of it. So also, we've been together for 30 years, right? Like just celebrating 28 years of marriage. And yeah, there is that commitment is absolutely crucial. A loyalty, a faithfulness, a promise, that we will go forward regardless of how many times it breaks down, gets ugly, starts again. And the magic was there when we met. And I'm very much, excuse me, a practical person who was like, yeah, I don't believe in magic. So either we have the ability to work this out and we have the desire to work this out, or it's not going to work out. And he was like, yeah, well, so from the start, we kind of came from different places in that. Um, but what I saw in him was the ability to father. He had children already, and I had not wanted children most of my life. And then when I turned 30, I was like, oh, if I'm going to do this, I should do it. So my first child was born when I was 33.
Cool.
So I have two that I raised that are older, makes it look a little more age appropriate or whatever. I don't know. But at any rate, that whole process of developing that primary relationship, I feel like is more challenging than probably any other healthy relationship you may try to have. I can have healthy relationships with my coworkers and with my writing students and that sort of thing because I'm not invested in it
Right.
emotionally, right? Like that can be much easier. We only have to agree at this level or these things, but when it's one that I'm committed to and invested in, it's a much deeper feeling than when there's a criticism or there is a stumble, or there is whatever, right? It's just a deeper feel to it.
So this word commitment, it just keeps coming back. It's like, what does it really mean? You
Yeah.
know, it's more than just a promise, although that's clearly part of it. There's like, and it's good. It doesn't mean one thing, maybe. Like what am I committed to is more than what I'm interested in, and so I'm committed. Let's say in a relationship, something that would be important to me is someone who's committed to bringing out the best in me, someone who's not willing to stand for just the minimum, like phoning it in kind of relationship, but that demands more at times, but not necessarily in a mean or aggressive way, but just holds a standard for what might be possible between two people. And that's something that is really important to me. Someone else might say, no, not really. Like we started at this level, and this level it works, and I don't want to rock the boat. I'm more than, and you know what? That's I don't have any judgment of that. That's fine. It's just not what I want. But what I want is not necessarily the right thing for everyone.
And that's kind of where compatibility comes in also. Right. It's like, okay, why am I trying to, if I'm the only one fighting to make this relationship work, why am I fighting? And what am I fighting for? Because I may be deluding myself. This is not a healthy relationship if I'm invested or committed in a certain way and the other person is not. If they're looking for something else, it's not going to fit. And so, because a lot of people think that, oh, they need to fight for their relationship. And I think, not necessarily. But that's, again, a part of presence, right? If I'm really present to what's going on, then I will know, I will feel, sooner or later anyway, that this is not the place for me. This is not working. This is not going to work. There's something not happening here. And I need to go somewhere else. Or life will present me with a situation and I'll have to deal with it. Sorry, Danielle, you were going to say something? I thought?
It was something.
About commitment?
No, it was more the maybe the what you're committed to in the relationship and bringing out the best in one another. Like, I'm committed in my life regardless of what my circumstances are, to continue to learn and grow and expand. And that's just who I am. And it's not who my husband is. And yet, there's been a few times where I'm like, well, you can either come with me or not, but I'm going, right? So we've had to negotiate that to a certain extent. But also, what I saw him in initially was nurturing growth, right? So even though he says that, I don't know that he mouths that. So I know that he will continue, maybe not to demand that I grow. Maybe that's not comfortable for him. Change is not comfortable for him. So this is not, if you're growing, you're probably changing, and you're probably changing things, between us. And so it's been an interesting thing to navigate. That's a better word than negotiate. We've had to navigate it. Like, I'm just not going to compromise on that.
Yeah.
That is who I am.
It's funny. What it just occurs to me is I think sometimes there's like this unspoken agreement, or maybe it's just an assumption on one side that like you're the person I'm marrying and you're going to stay this person. Like, you're not. What happened to the woman I married or the man I married? Well,
Yeah, there was definitely a point like that in my relationship with my husband, and it was after I got critically injured and changed my career and kind of said, I've got to go on a new growth spurt here. And he's like, what? What? You're not the same person. And at some point, my daughter said something to me, and I said, well, it's got to be terribly hard to be married to me right now. He doesn't know what to expect. Right. I don't know what to expect. I can't tell him. Right? I don't know. I'm just showing up for what's next, because something's next. But
that's actually kind of a really good example. Not even kind of a really good example. It is a really good example of what we were speaking of before about this being sensitive and present to what is, because presence is always in motion. And being sensitive to another person, like you're changing, being because of necessity or choice, but you're changing. And he's okay, where he thought the ground was isn't there anymore. It's moving. And maybe he doesn't have his balance. And you're noticing that, paying attention to that, being with that, supportive of that, right? Sensitive to that, compassionate for that. Yeah. So that is, there's a kind of commitment, unspoken commitment in that. We were speaking of commitment, I think. And that's it. Commitment is, there's somehow seeing the other person in a commitment and knowing that things will change and trusting that you can handle it on both sides and not taking responsibility for the other person, but allowing that person the space to evolve in a changing and perhaps trying situation, and knowing, understanding that this may be difficult for that person and I can handle it. Not fix it, but handle it.
Not fix it.
Yeah, not fix it. That's not my responsibility to fix somebody else. That's theirs. I can support them, I can hold them, I can listen, I can reflect, I can do a lot of things, be present with them, just be. But it's not my responsibility to fix them. And I risk being arrogant if I think it is. It doesn't mean they don't ask me for help or my opinion or whatever, but.
Even the assumption that someone, including myself, including anyone, needs to be fixed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I think it was you, Danielle, actually, that talked about wisdom last week. There's something about people's journeys, where they are and what they need to learn and the challenges that come their way to afford them the possibility to learn and grow if they choose to do so. And sometimes they're forced to learn and grow even if they don't choose.
Yeah, I think, the opportunity to learn something is presented, and it's often in a very difficult way, right? And my version of this is if you go under it, over it, round it, you're going to run into it again. You just get to take it.
Well, it appears to me at least that learning and growing is just part of the requirement for being here. I mean, some people, I just sat with a woman for the first time just a little bit before this call, and she basically said, "No, I'm not really interested in that." She essentially said, "I've lived a very shallow life, and I'm okay with that." And I didn't have a judgment of it, but boy, was she able to go deep when I invited her there. It's
That's
like,
interesting.
yeah, it was like she was very comfortable in her shallowness, but there was a whole other world that she hadn't even considered in that little comfort zone.
And
So
that's the way I feel about my husband as well. He says that, but he doesn't live that.
right.
Like, it's there.
He's
He
been with you for
uses
30 years.
intuition very well. He reads
Right.
people very well. He just doesn't want to spend a lot of time talking about it. And he doesn't want to spend a lot of time talking to them either.
So does he seem like he's grown in 30 years since you've met him?
Oh, absolutely. He has.
Well, there you have it. Everyone's not committed to talking about it. I think that growing is part of the rules of life, but I don't think talking about it is necessarily required.
And that's an interesting point. For some people, verbalizing it is very important,
Yeah.
But when verbalizing and actions don't match up, which one do you go with? I always go with action, right? And for me, that's been a big part of my journey, is to make my actions and what I say line up.
Yeah.
And how I feel would be bonus. If all three of those things line up, then I'm in integrity. And then I can, say what I mean and mean what I say and not say it mean. So those things have all been a journey for me. They haven't just been innate characteristics for me. I've had to unlearn a lot of judging. I've had to unlearn a lot of criticizing and relearn how to well, initially it was how to coach riders with horses, how to coach people to be able to be a teammate with somebody that doesn't speak their language. Right. So there was a lot of that where I have to encourage as opposed to criticize to get this to move forward and be successful.
Mm-hmm. Encourage is kind of, opening a door to a possibility. And criticism, I just sort of see this idea of criticism as closing down and making small and reducing someone or something. It doesn't seem immediately healthy in my understanding.
I think it depends on how you define criticize.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, if, let's say you're drinking, or I'm in a relationship and someone is drinking and they're abusing alcohol. And I say, make some observation. That's not working for you. It feels like, when you drink, your life is moving in a certain direction, whatever. You may not call that encouragement, but it's also not like I'm not judging them. I'm making an observation. It's really pointing to their behavior or to a particular way of even of thinking or being in the world that isn't working.
But I wouldn't call that criticism. I guess maybe for me, criticism has an element of belittling someone in some way.
Yeah, and I get that that's sort of a definition that's become popular, but I don't think that's like if you're a film critic, your job is not to belittle movies.
No, but you critique them.
Criticize. There you go.
Yeah, for me, there's a nuance. There's a difference. I can critique something which can be positive or negative. I'm stating an opinion about something,
right,
or an understanding, an observation. But criticism, for me, that's how I understand criticism, is in some way belittling. someone.
And I love the word encourage, because I'm not sure if this is the direct breakdown, but to encourage someone is to give them courage, right? To help them find the courage in themselves to maybe move through an obstacle, or to see themselves, in a more, positive way.
Yeah, the way you describe encourage, and thank you very much for that. I see it as empowerment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they're very similar. Yeah.
Giving the opportunity for mastery in the other person.
And I think the difference between criticism and constructive criticism is, because they are both valid in coaching, like constructive criticism as well as encouragement, because you have to tell them what it isn't working, right? So that's constructive criticism if you're giving them a way to make that work with
Yes.
their horse, or with their relationship with a human. That to me is the difference, that people will say that it's constructive criticism, but if you're not then encouraging or suggesting or providing a way to do something different, then it's just criticism, and it doesn't give them an alternative way to go. For instance, like if you said to somebody you were close to that was drinking that doesn't seem to be working for you, or even if you said, how's that working for you? Right? Because that's a pretty common thing to say. They're going to take it however they take it. You do mean it as an observation, but you're not following through with, what could you do instead? How can I support you? If you're following through with that, then yeah, that's just, let's do better in the relationship. Let's do better in our own possibility making. That's what I think is the missing element in criticism often, is that you don't
Oh,
come up
that's
with a
good.
new possibility.
Yeah. Like I used to have a mentor who would say, don't bring me a problem without at least two solutions to it.
There you
You know?
go.
And kind of coming out of that, there's the one last element that I don't think we've overtly discussed, which is really like seeing the best in someone, like seeing them as more than just their opinions or their breakdown in this moment, or their, harsh words because they just had a really stressful day, to really see that in someone. And I think, well, actually, I've heard both of you two describe that about your partners, in different ways. It's not surprising that you've been together for 30 years, because you see beyond the little tiny things that the ego wants to get annoyed by this. The ego says that, they chew with their mouth open. And this is like what's going to go on the divorce decree. They chew with their mouth open, where, it's like, what is it about this person that's so much more than that we can begin to see? And if I can, so it's like romance. Okay, here's going back to romance. Romance is like two personalities, two egos matching, like seeing, finding themselves completed in the other person. But maybe love is something else entirely, which is, my truth, my true self, and your true self coming together. And I'm seeing that aspect of you, and you see that aspect of me.
Yep. It's kind of like, and that's beautiful, Fred. It's like, if I only am attracted to you with your clothes and makeup on, then I'm not attracted to you.
Sorry.
Well, the difference is, if you don't have your clothes and makeup on, right?
No, I was saying something silly, and never mind. But go ahead.
But I
Sorry.
still love you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank
We
you.
have a good relationship. We're okay.
Right.
Yeah, but there's this idea that she dresses to the nines, and she's does herself up and everything, and I
Right.
love her. I actually had somebody. This actually happened to me many years ago. This person had seen me get onto the subway in a mustard yellow training sort of suit or whatever you call it. And my hair was, well, my hair is my hair. So it does whatever it wants. But this person had said to another person, I didn't have makeup on. And this person had said, I don't know what happened to her. I was in love with her. I wanted to marry her. But this person was used to seeing me in work attire with makeup on, my hair pulled back. I was all, looking good. And then saw another side of me. And then I wasn't attractive to him anymore. And I find that really interesting. It's like, then you were never interested in me.
Right.
Because no matter whether I've got a mustard colored training suit on or I'm dressed to the nines with diamonds and makeup and Lord knows whatever, I'm still the same person under all of that. If you want a good, healthy relationship with me, it has to be with me and not with all of that. The roles I play, what I put on myself to cover myself up or enhance myself or whatever. I'm still in here, no matter what all that stuff is. And the same thing goes for whoever I'm with. It's like, yeah, you can dress up in a suit and a fancy tie and whatever, and have your car and your whatever, but it doesn't matter because that's not who you are.
Right.
It's not who you are. I'm actually going to throw in a thing here. We're going to run out of time, but we had mentioned earlier, and you came back to this romance thing, this idea of telepathy. Yeah, I don't speak English every day, so telepathy and romance. It's not romantic if I have to tell the other person. And I'm thinking, well, not telling the other person what I need, what I want, what I like, whatever, is kind of setting myself up to not get what I need or want or like. And it's also setting the other person up to fail. For me, it's setting the other person up to be my blame object. I didn't get what I wanted, not because I didn't tell you, but because you should have known.
Because you didn't figure it out.
Yeah, and it's all a fantasy. It's all an illusion.
Yeah.
And that's another sort of unhealthy relationship. I mean, some illusion in a relationship can be fun, but generally speaking, illusions are not conducive to healthy relationships.
I go to the movies for illusions. I mean, there's plenty of places for that. But it also points back to like this personal responsibility thing of and the commitment thing of what was I really committed to? Like if I don't tell you what I want and then you don't provide it and I get pissed, maybe what I was committed to was being pissed. Maybe I was committed to making you wrong, maybe and you know what? If somebody can gently and respectfully reveal that, maybe that's an insight that I could use to not keep doing that. Like maybe I really don't want that, but unconsciously I'm just living out some old program.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people, I think a lot of people are committed to being a victim.
Oh yeah. But committed unconsciously, right? I mean, they don't.
Yeah. And so they have to have a bully. I mean, we can do it all in our own head. Let me not exclude myself from this. We can do the whole job.
Everybody out there that does that stuff.
Don't need anybody else to do it, right? But
it's that victim, rescuer, or persecutor thing. You guys know that,
right? We can do all three roles.
Right.
We don't need somebody else to participate. Yeah. But it's handy if somebody will participate with this. So as you were saying that originally, though, I was trying to remember when I sort of adopted this definition of love. So it was whenever I read this book, and it was, I'm pretty sure before I got married, and was The Road Less Traveled by Scott Peck. And his definition of love is to extend yourself for your own or another's growth.
So could you say it again? Pick up a little.
To extend yourself for your own or another's growth. So that's kind of what I came into this relationship with. Not that I've been able to stay there, but that's still kind of my go-to when think of what does love mean. It means that I will put myself out for my own growth, for my husband's growth, for the growth of my children, for the growth of my family, for those that are dear to me. So
I'll throw this out. I mean, I know we have like 5 seconds left. But, I think that love can, and I think they're both legitimate. Like we can define love from the perspective of doing or action, which is kind of what largely I heard Danielle just describe. And love can also come from the place of being as just a state of being, which I would, define love as from a state of being perspective, maybe as like non-judgmental acceptance. You are, I accept you completely exactly as you are. And I think that's love, but it isn't romantic love. It's a place of being that I think can contribute enormously to a healthy relationship.
yeah, what would be safer?
Right, exactly. And safety is another word we haven't said, but there it is.
I'm going to throw in a thing though, just to be on the safe side for people watching, in case there's a misunderstanding. Accepting the other person fully and wholly for who they are, and also myself for fully and wholly who I am. This does not mean that I necessarily accept everything they do, especially if it is detrimental to my health.
Yes. Well, keep in mind, I was saying who they are, not what they do.
Yeah. Yeah. I just thought I would point that out for people who may misunderstand.
Yeah. Like I don't accept you being physically violent towards me, but that doesn't mean I can't love the person who's being violent. It might be hard, but I'm just using it as an example.
It could, because love doesn't mean I allow you to treat me in any way you see fit in the moment, especially if you have impulse control issues.
Yeah.
That's not what love is. I can love you, and that's it. It doesn't have to be there available for anything you throw at me.
I bet that creates a lot of confusion for people, that simple misunderstanding.
Yeah.
That if I love you, I have to accept everything you do.
And also, if you love me, if I think you love me, then I can forgive all of the hitting and the cussing and the whatever you're doing because you love me. There's a huge misunderstanding. That's not the love we're talking about. I don't know if I would call that love. I'm not going to get into that, but that's not what we're talking about right now when we're referring to love.
Well, shockingly, we were not able to address all of love and relationships in this hour.
Darn.
I thought for sure we would be able to do it.
In the last minute.
Sitcom status yet.
We'll never run out of things to talk about. Boy. Danielle, would you like to say some closing words?
I just really enjoy the talks here. I really enjoy the opportunity to share ideas with my posse members and with the people that show up. And if you are interested in reaching out to me, the best way to get a hold of me is just Facebook message me. If you're interested in my business page, that is the same name, Danielle McMahon, Pursuing Personal Peace.
I love that, Pursuing Personal Peace. Fred, Dr. Blum.
Yeah, echoing what Danielle said. I just always love these conversations, and I hope they're valuable. I know we had Jan and Rosalie and Angela out listening, at least for part of this conversation today, and so we appreciate you guys being here, and hopefully some other people will get to join in on this in the replay. And if anything, if anybody would like to reach out to me, there's my information down below. You can find me on Facebook as well. And I'm just here to serve. So if there's something I can do, please reach out.
Thank you, Fred. Oddly enough, my Facebook group is called Relation Revolution. Mm-hmm. I claim to know something about relationships.
As evidenced by this conversation.
Thank you very much, Fred. I appreciate that. if you'd like to get in touch with me, there is my contact information and my website. And as I mentioned, I do have a Facebook group called Relation Revolution. I have a page called Miriam Siegel. That is my name. And I would love to hear from you. Thank you very, very much to my fellow posse members. I love being with you. I love being with you in all those forms. And I look forward to the next time. And thank you, those of you who have been watching us live and those of you who will watch the replay. And feel free to ask us questions and comment on anything that we've brought up in this talk. Next week's talk is live and interactive. That means that you get a chance to join us on screen, and we would be happy to talk to you. Our topic for next week is presence and depression. So if this sounds interesting to you, please feel free to join us live and interactive when the Presence Posse gathers again next Monday.
Yeehaw.
Until then, yeehaw. Until then, please take care, and we wish you happy, healthy relationships, and we'll see you next Monday.